Yo, what is up everybody? Welcome back to the channel. For those of you who don't know me, I'm Jason Anthony. I'm a full-time content creator. On this channel, I like to teach you guys how to step up your content creating skills. Now for today's video, I have to give you guys a little bit of a warning. If you guys are sensitive to light flickering, you're epileptic, please do not watch this video, or be warned, I don't want to be the cause of someone having an episode or something bad happening to you guys, because we're going to be going over shutter speed and these lights behind me are going to be flickering at some point. So I just want to send out that warning. You guys are probably wondering, why is Jay spinning a fidget spinner? Like, those are so last year. Well, today we're going to be talking about the 180-degree shutter rule. So those of you who don't know, those of you who already do know, stay tuned, because I want to give you guys some information on how to set your shutter and your frame rates properly, and how we can help get rid of this flicker right here. You guys can see that there's some LED flicker from the lights. So let's go ahead, get into today's video. So when it comes to video, frame rates and shutter speed go hand in hand. This is known as the 180-degree shutter rule. Now, the 180-degree shutter rule calls for doubling your frame rates for your shutter speed. For example, right now, I'm recording on 24 frames per second. So my shutter speed is double that amount. So my shutter speed technically should be 1/48, but being that my camera doesn't have that shutter speed, I'm using 1/50. Now, the reason why we want to do that is because it's for proper motion blur. Now, as you guys can see, as I'm waving my hands, you see some blur. This is proper for cinematic movements. Now, there's other different frame rates that you can use, and that all depends on what you're shooting. So if you guys are familiar with reality TV shows and you notice how everything looks a little crispier and like less motion blur, that's because it's shot at 30 frames per second. Now there's other frame rates like 60 frames per second, 90 frames per second. Some cameras do 120 frames per second. Some big cinema cameras even do super slow motion at 200 plus frames per second. Now this is all used for different scenarios. Now the higher frame rates are used for slow motion or speeding things up. So 60 to 120 frames per second is what I usually use for my B-roll to slow it down and ramp up, like you guys saw in my last tutorial. But why do you want to have your shutter speed proper besides motion blur? Well, I want to show you guys a little bit of an example using the fidget spinner right here. Now, if I hold up the fidget spinner and I bring it to the camera so we can focus, and now we're at 24 frames per second at the proper shutter speed. If I spin it, it looks nice and blurry. You guys get that? So what I'm gonna do now is bump up the shutter speed from 1/50th to, let's try 1/100. Okay, so now I'm at 1/100th. Let's see how this looks. Do you guys notice how it's not as blurry? Now I'm gonna bump up the shutter speed even higher. Okay, so now do you guys notice how my computer and everything is flickering? Well, that's because of the shutter speed. It's super high. So let's go ahead and try this right now. And notice how it's not spinning as fast. Well, it appears that way. It's because we don't have as much motion blur. Let's check it out one more time. All right, and now we're gonna do one more test. Let's bump up the shutter speed even higher. This was at 1/500th. Let's see how high we can get. Okay, so now we're at 1/1000th. Let's check this out. Wow, it doesn't even look like it's spinning right now, but you guys could hear it. All right, before you guys go nuts, let me fix the shutter speed. All right, so now we're back, and I hope you guys are starting to understand how the frame rates and shutter speed go hand in hand. Now, the 180-degree rule can be broken. It's not a set rule. If you're outside and you need to make your shutter speed a little bit faster because you don't have an ND filter or one that's strong enough, you can of course bump it up. But for that proper motion blur, for everything to look super cinematic, I recommend trying to use the 180-degree rule as best as possible. Now, when it comes to light flicker, if you're shooting like a concert or event, the reason why you're getting light flickering is because either your frame rates or shutter speed are not in sync with the frequency of the lighting. Now, a lot of LED lights these days, or newer lights, are accustomed to not give you the flicker, but you will experience this case at some point or another. Now, light flicker is more noticeable when you're shooting slow motion or a high shutter speed, but how can we prevent this from happening? Now, sometimes no matter what you do, you're not going to be able to get rid of it, but with these tips that I'm going to be giving you guys, this should help a ton. So let's go over some solutions to help prevent light flicker. The first is the settings in your camera. If you're in North America, make sure that you're set to NTSC, Asia or Europe PAL. This will help reduce the flicker because the camera should be set to the proper frequency of the lighting. Now, if you still notice some light flicker, there's a couple more things we could do. One of them is lowering your frame rate. So if you're at 120 frames or 60 frames, drop it to 30 or 24. Now, if we're still noticing some light flicker, if you're at 1/50 of say for 24 frames per second, go as low as 1/24 or something close to that, like 1/25 or 1/30. Now, if you're still noticing some light flicker, there's a couple more things we can do. Now, by dropping your shutter speed that slow, make sure you're not filming anything crazy like action sports. If you're talking like I am right now, that's okay, but anything with fast movement, it's gonna be super blurry, so just have that in the back of your head. Now, the only real other thing that we can do to prevent this light flicker, if you're still noticing it after these tips, try to change up the lighting or the location. Otherwise, there's some ways of getting rid of it in post, but it's not gonna look as good, so just be mindful of that. Sometimes you're gonna have light flicker if you're shooting a concert or event. Just let the person that you're shooting for know that you've tried everything, and hopefully they'll understand. If not, it is what it is, but these tips should definitely help get your flicker down. All right, so that wraps up today's video, guys. For you new filmmakers, I hope this was insightful, and for you seasoned videographers out there, let me know if you have any tips or tricks on how to reduce light flicker in the comments below. I want to hear all about it, and if there's anything I didn't cover, please let me know. Hang out with me on Instagram. I'll make sure to leave the link in the description below. I've been loving having awesome conversations with you guys and seeing your work posted, so let's connect over there. Until next time, I'm Jay Anthony. Peace.